Okay, yes. We're guessing the frog. It's my turn to guess. And Ben, you said you spliced two calls together here, so I can see there's a different individual.
You can tell the audio quality change, can't you?
This one sounds a bit more desperate. Mate, this reminds me of... do you remember that frog ages ago that was sounded like the chupacabra?
The chupacabra frog, yes. I remember guessing it correctly because it was definitely called the chupacabra frog.
Yeah. The one that lives under shoes.
Yeah, of course, the shoe-dwelling chupacabra frog. Yes, I know.
Remember though, there was there was that paper about that frog. I can't remember what it's called, but they were they just love being they're in fields and they hide out under old shoes. It's so weirdly specific. But what is this?
I mean, I can give you a hint that it's living in close proximity to the species that we'll be discussing later on in the episode.
Okay, so it's Australian.
Mm-hmm. That narrows it down for you a wee bit.
It sounds like something really flat and big and stupid looking.
Well, those are quite subjective characterizations of this dear little frog.
It's a burrowing frog.
Oh.
I think it's yeah, I think it's a burrowing frog. I can't think of any. I don't know any Australian burrowing frogs, but I'm going to go burrowing frog.
It is so Cyclorana Mahony or Mahony.
Doesn't sound burrowing.
I don't know how the eyes at the end of words work. It's Maine's frog, and they are very spherical. They've got quite a short little face. Dappled sort of tan and brown, about 5 centimeters in body length.
Damn it, it's the sheep frog. God, I almost said it. Oh, no. I almost said it. I so nearly said it. Oh, it's devastating, mate.
I mean, I could have got it. You even had the chupacabra connection with the whole...
they kill sheep, right? The goats. Oh.
Yeah, hundreds of them will come out of the ground in the middle of summer and swarm over whichever sheep and goat can be found in the nearby area. No, I'm sure they're very pleasant. I'm sure they're pleasant and they focus on eating small invertebrates. But they do sound like a distressed sheep.
Cyclorana Mahony. I could have got one there. Still 2 each. Is there anything else special about this frog that we should know?
Oof. They come out from October to March.
Floodplains.
They kind of look like other Cyclorana species. They're kind of cool. I don't know.
Found in the arid western deserts and central deserts.
Yes, all the way to the west. Yeah.
It's also been likened to an ambulance siren.
I mean, I guess I can see that.
Well, there we go. Maine's frog. And Maine was a herpetologist from Australia, apparently. Wow, cool. I like it. I can't believe I missed the opportunity to get that frog, though. Oh, my days. That is actually quite devastating.
Devastated.
Yeah, I am. So I've missed a chance. It's you to guess again next time. All right. You can't win them all. We're still level. Jeez. All right. Well, let's move on, shall we? From Maine's frog to our main dragon of the day.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we have a paper by Chandrasekara, Mancuso, Sumner, Edwards, Zdenek, and Fry, published in 2024. Sugar-coated survival, N-glycosylation as a unique bearded dragon venom resistance trait within Australian agamid lizards, published in Comparative Biochemistry and Physiology, Part C, yada, yada, yada. So...
Glycosylation, eh? Sounds delicious.
Yeah, just glycosylation. Yeah. That's what it is. So that doesn't really need explaining. Obviously, everyone knows what glycosylation is. We're back on the subject of venom.
For those in the back that might not have heard, do you want to maybe define it?
Yeah. So, wait, all in good time though. I think glycosylation is basically sticking a sugar on it, isn't it?
Okay, there we go.
You stick it. You stick a sugar.
Good
on
enough.
Yeah, well, we'll get into more detail, but we're on the subject of arms races. So we had a good one a few weeks ago, didn't we, Ben, with the garter snakes and the rough-skinned newts? Yeah, so the garter snakes eat the newts produce tetrodotoxin, which is very toxic. The snakes evolve resistance, the newts just get more toxic. And there was that relationship between where there are snakes and the newts which live with snakes were more toxic generally.
Yes.
And so that was a case where a predator was evolving resistance to the poison of its prey. We've kind of we've flip reversed it this time. So this time we're looking at a predator-prey relationship again, but this time the one with the resistance is the prey rather than the predator.
Yeah.
And so here we have a paper about resistance to snake venom, and it's a particular type of snake venom that we're looking at, a particular component of snake venom called alpha neurotoxin, which are venom peptides which block the nerve muscle signal transduction in animals. So essentially they bind to this postsynaptic receptor which halts normal neurotransmission. So it stops signals from your brain to your body, and this leads to paralysis and subsequent respiratory failure. So, yeah, what does that feel like?
And likely ingestion by snake.
Yes, and that's probably how you die in the end. If you haven't died by respiratory failure, you die because you're being digested. Not very nice. But yeah, this component, this alpha-1 neurotoxin, is ubiquitous in elapid snake venoms. There are a few different kinds of alpha neurotoxin. We're talking about alpha-1, but this component is in all elapid snake venoms. So cobras, coral snakes, sea snakes, death adders, all have this component.
I'm sorry,
it's also found in.
I'm going to be a little bit pedantic here. You're saying alpha-1 neurotoxin, but I don't think it's alpha-1 neurotoxin, right? It's an alpha neurotoxin which affects the alpha-1. That's where it's binding to, right? Is an alpha-1 subunit. The neurotoxin itself isn't alpha-1. It's just alpha.
Okay, I just know you get type 1 alpha neurotoxins, type 2 alpha neurotoxins, type 3 alpha neurotoxins.
Okay.
But I don't know. I'm getting that from a paper back in 2003, so it's been 20 years. Maybe they refer to them differently now. What was your distinction? Sorry, Ben.
Sorry?
Okay, we should preface this. Obviously, neither of us are venom people, so we're trying our best. What was it you said?
Well, so blah, 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 blah. Alpha neurotoxin, as in neurotoxins that go after you have different types of subunit, right? You've got alpha-1, alpha-2, alpha-3, alpha-4 in some places. I think it's potentially different places where I don't know what I'm talking about. They're expressed in different places. I think it's more the venom itself is an alpha neurotoxin, but in this case they're looking at the alpha-1 subunit, which is where it's binding, which is a specific area. So alpha-1 subunit of the postsynaptic inotitic acetylchlorine receptor.
Yeah.
Right, that's where the alpha-1 bit is for the where it's going as opposed to the venom itself. And you were saying alpha-1 neurotoxin. I'm not sure if it's that specific is all. I don't know if that's a thing.
Yeah, it is, yeah. They can be type 1, type 2, or type 3 alpha neurotoxins.
Right.
Yeah, because I think the first two are common, and then the third type are only in, like, brown snakes. But anyway, that's like more detail than I think is really required. I think the thing you really we're drowning. Yeah, the take home message is there's this alpha-1 subunit which is being affected by neurotransmitters, and yeah, it's in pretty much all elapid snake venoms. So snakes from the family Elapidae have it. This neurotoxin, which can affect how you operate. And lots of animals have developed an immunity to this particular type of venom. Mongooses and some snakes have immunity. So mongooses obviously eat snakes.
That's a classic, isn't it? That's the one most people know about, mongoose being tough.
Exactly. And some snakes also get immunity from their own venom, which is obviously important.
In case they
bite yourself by accident, or somebody else might bite you who's similar. Yeah. But yeah, so the way that mongooses and snakes get immunity from their own venom is a process called steric hindrance, which is a mutation which causes this chunk of sugar molecules to be added to the receptors of transmitters. And what these do is they block the alpha neurotoxin from binding. So it can't bind, doesn't work. There is another means of getting immunity, which is slightly different, which is to do with the charge of an amino acid in the receptor site, which can also repel alpha neurotoxin. And they call that something different. What do they call that?
Electrostatic charge repulsion.
Yeah. But essentially you've got steric hindrance where sugar gets in the way, and then you've got whatever Ben just said, which is where charge basically repels the neurotoxin. And the one with the charge is it has evolved independently a bunch of times, including snake-eating animals like the honey badger, which is another absolute savage mammal which will eat snakes, hedgehogs as well, pigs too, because pigs eat snakes, no doubt, and also some slow-moving prey such as Burmese python. Burmese pythons apparently have a bit of resistance to this.
Pigs eat snakes?
Oh yeah,
you
of course,
said that
man.
with such like conviction. I would have thought it'd just be there snuffling around looking for other stuff, and a snake bites them on the nose accidentally.
You think of a pig as like this sort of benign creature, right?
Mostly.
But pigs are actually, mate. Pigs will take over if we let them. Honestly, like they're savages, mate. They are savages. They'll snuff anything, mate. Honestly, they'll eat snakes for sure. If they snuffle up a snake, they'll gulp it down. And apparently, they've got a bit of venom resistance to.
I mean, that tracks.
Neurotoxic venom. Yeah, which is crazy. But also Sicilians, those like weird underground amphibians with no legs, they've also evolved resistance to neurotoxin. Do you remember we did that paper about it? They like have coral snakes all over them all the time, and they all evolve the same resistance to the coral snake venom.
Yes.
So yeah, there's kind of two different ways in which venom resistance against these alpha neurotoxins is known to evolve. And this is where the dragons come into it. So we're talking about bearded dragons, the Australian central bearded dragon, Pagona viticeps, which is a member of this lizard family called Agamidae. It's an agamid lizard. Australia has loads of these, 118 species, and obviously they're in Australia, so they coexist with lots of very venomous snakes. And agamid lizards in general tend to be quite quick. They usually are quite light of limb and body. They have long limbs, gripping toes, and they're pretty sharp. Agile. They can evade capture by predatory snakes by sort of being nimble. But anyone who's spent time with a bearded dragon can tell you they're not really built for speed.
Especially on laminate floors.
Especially on laminate floors. Yeah, they're like... but don't get me wrong, if you put one down on like a substrate they can run on, like some uneven rock or something, they can get a wiggle on over a short distance, they can, but they're not exactly built for speed. And so as a result, they're not built for speed, and they have actually evolved this N-glycosylation form of the steric hindric resistance. So they have the sugary lump in their neurotransmitter, which means that the venom won't affect them. So they are significantly resistant to alpha neurotoxins found in snake venom, which is great because lots and lots of venomous snakes in Australia would like to eat them, particularly death adders and brown snakes. And they wanted to know whether this trait is unique to the Australian central bearded dragon or whether other Australian agamids also possess it. Obviously, we've got 118 odd species in Australia, only 5 or 6 of which are in the same genus as bearded dragons. And so they wanted to look and see how many of these agamids actually possessed this venom resistance, whether it had been evolved multiple times or whether it was sort of ubiquitous or whether it was just the bearded dragons that were doing it. And so they did a bunch of genetic sequencing in the region of the genome which controls for this mutation, and they just looked to see which species had the modification to produce this sugary steric resistance to alpha neurotoxins.
Or the charge. They were checking for the charge as well, right?
They were also checking for the charge.
Because you never know.
They checked for both
Maybe
types.
Some other lizards have switched over to the other one that's popped up in all those diverse species that you mentioned. Yeah.
But yeah, I think what was cool about it, because they created this big phylogeny, this big family tree of agamid lizards, and they looked to see the venom resistance. And yeah, outside of Pagona, which is the genus of bearded dragons, the other species have limited, if any, levels of venom resistance.
Yeah.
Which is consistent with their kind of ecological and morphological distinctiveness relative to Pagona. So Pagona, the bearded dragons, are kind of the only like sort of larger, fatter, slower ones. And they're the only ones who've evolved this resistance to the venom. So essentially, if you are too slow to be getting away, you've got to evolve to be a tank that can just take it. And I wonder if...
Yes, there are 5 species, right, that they looked at of these dragons. Yeah,
5 species in the genus Pagona. And yeah, all 5 of them had this resistance by their sugary molecule. Even Rankinia dimensis, right? Rankin's dragon, which is basically a bearded dragon. Have you ever seen one?
I haven't. No, I'm not.
You see them in pet shops, mate. Like they basically look like a miniature, slightly slender bearded dragon. I mean, if someone told me it was a bearded dragon, I'd probably believe it. But they tend to be a bit smaller and a little bit more nimble.
Yeah, they've got a bit more of a classic agamid form to them. But you are right; they're like a slim dragon. The face, especially on some of them, very bearded dragon-like.
Yeah, they're sort of seen, I think, in the sort of reptile hobby as like a sort of slightly stubby, posh, maybe a little bit of a posh bearded dragon, a little bit posh. But basically, looks like a bearded dragon. But yeah, they don't have any kind of resistance. And they actually talked about this in the paper because that surprised me. I was like, they're basically the same animal. Why don't they have it? But apparently, they are found much more far south. So they're in southern Australia and Tasmania, which have way lower densities of alpha neurotoxic snakes. I think Tasmania has no snakes. So yeah. What does it say? In fact, they do have snakes. They do have snakes, but there are fewer.
Sorry,
snakes.
I was looking. I looked up Rankin's dragon. I'm going to completely derail everything now.
Derail us, Ben. Take us out of it.
I'll look up Rankin's dragon as what you said, thinking that I was going to find Rankinia, as in the genus Rankinia, because we've got Rankinia dimensis is the one that they look at, which doesn't have resistance. Rankin's dragon is Pagona Henry Lawsoni, which does have resistance.
Oh, bollocks. Yeah, I got completely confused.
Right, because you were looking at the genus and you're like, dragon... there we go, Rankin, bam, Rankin's dragon, right next, Sister Taxa, perfect. No,
so stupid.
At Mountain Heath Dragon or Mountain Dragon is that one. That's the one that's non-resistant.
Yeah, I'm stupid because Rankinia dimensis is that mountain dragon we've done loads of episodes on, Ben. I just completely spaced on it.
But we caught it. Caught it.
We caught it. You caught it, yeah.
And they look even slimmer and kind of reddish and really... They look like they could motor.
I'm glad you caught that because I'm actually stupid. That's ridiculous. Okay, cool. So Rankin's dragons are immune. God damn it.
Yes, but the confusingly named Rankinia, not immune.
Yeah, because Rankinia, they're the really cool mountain dragons that we've done multiple episodes about.
And potentially their agility is what gives them, that relaxes that selection on needing to be resistant, and they can dodge and dive their way out of trouble.
But yeah, Rankin's dragon is basically a bearded dragon. It is in the same genus.
But they are slimmer, it looks like. But not slim enough.
But they're also confusingly called Pagona Henry Lawsoni.
Yes. That's to keep you on your toes.
Named... But then why Rankin's dragon?
I mean...
Okay. Henry Lawsoni was a poet. He was a poet, Henry Lawson, apparently. Random. Okay, so... Yeah. So Rankin's dragons are immune. That is what the take-home is. But Rankinia dimensis is not. And that is not. That is a mountain dragon. Wow. Okay. Criminal. I forgot about mountain dragons temporarily. But anyway, so everyone who is a bearded dragon is immune. Everything who isn't a bearded dragon is not immune.
So you were saying about Pagona, Henry Lawsoni, and Barbata. They have an additional substitution that might be sort of giving them a little bit extra resistance as well, which is intriguing. So you've got this baseline of clearly resistant, core expected. What do you call it? Steric hindrance substitutions.
Yeah.
But these two others might have additional resistance on top of that, because those substitutions have been shown to have some effect on the alpha neurotoxin binding. So I don't know, maybe those two are under increased pressure. They're not sister taxa from each other, so they seem to, it potentially could be, well, they're suggesting that was originally there and it's been lost in some species, I think. Yes. So maybe those other species have had a slight relaxed pressure and they've lost that one, or maybe it's not super effective, or these two are under very consistent pressure from elapids with alpha neurotoxic venoms, just to maintain that additional substitution. I don't know.
Be interesting to see which snakes they all co-occur with and the density of them.
Yeah. Well, and also the sort of preference of those snakes, whether certain lizards are tastier than others.
Yeah. And so they say, basically you've got either resistance, either develop an immunity, or evolve to be quick. Or there's option 3, which they talk about in the paper, which is the thorny devil. So that's Moloch horridus, which is another agamid lizard, which has kind of one
of the most
completely the other way. Yeah. And it's just become really insane, basically. So They've got loads of really sophisticated defense moves. It's called a thorny devil because they're covered in thorns. They're like super spiky. But they have like a false head on top of their head. Like a bony lump, which makes it difficult to swallow them. They're also cryptically coloured. They don't really move too much. When they do move, they move really slowly so that things don't notice them. They can also inflate when they're threatened.
They're basically land-dwelling pufferfish.
Yeah. But basically, they don't get bitten by venomous snakes because they're just really well armoured. So they don't really have the same pressure to develop resistance sort of chemically or molecularly from snake venom. They're just too robust already, so they don't have any resistance either. But yeah, so it kind of turns out that the development of this robust resistance to alpha neurotoxins is a defining trait of the genus Pagona, these bearded dragons, including Rankin's dragon, but not including the mountain dragon Rankinia diamensis, which is completely different. I'm just dumb. Sorry, Jafe, I know that's your favourite lizard. I do know what they are. I'm just having a moment. But yeah, so we have bearded dragons being resistant, which is really cool. I mean, I just love the idea that bearded dragons just truck snake bites.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems to be this trade-off, doesn't it? You can either dodge snake bites, you can either dodge them by making yourself really unbiteable by speed or armament, or you can just get bitten and tough it out.
Yeah, precisely. Good on them.
Like the mongoose.
Good on them. Been a while since I had an interaction with the bearded dragon, actually. I've seen one for a while. Would be nice. Have you got any other business for this episode, Ben?
I have one very minor piece of any other business. I have a news article here where a Brazilian rainbow boa produced 14 baby snakes in quote-unquote miracle birth.
It was a miracle birth. Yeah. And some of the headlines, they loved it. They were like, male snake gives birth to young. It's like, no. Somebody misidentified
Ronaldo.
A snake. Yeah. Was it called Ronaldo?
Yeah. Ronaldo, the Brazilian rainbow boa. It's now
I've had quite a few people
mother of 14 baby snakes.
Yeah. And I've had quite a few people tell me about this. A lot of the general public didn't know about parthenogenesis before this. So I think it's cool that this has come up.
I think that's ridiculous. If you haven't seen the 1999 Godzilla movie, then that explains it all.
Was it not 98?
It could be 98.
It was 98, but what a movie. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, Godzilla, she goes down into the tunnel and she lays her eggs.
Yeah.
They feed them all that fish. But yeah, so yeah, this Brazilian rainbow boa parthenogenesis. Is this the first time in Brazilian rainbow boas? I think it is, isn't it? Parthenogenesis. I don't remember ever reading about it in them.
Only the third occurrence to be documented of a captive Brazilian rainbow boa anywhere in the world.
How is this newsworthy? It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, it must have been a slow news day. So snake that we already knew demonstrated parthenogenesis. The classic case, an animal in a zoo, completely isolated for many, many, many years. Desperation, perhaps some kind of environmental trigger. I haven't mated in however many years. I'm going to produce some clones which are slightly naff and a bit duff, but it's better than nothing. Yeah, that's how parthenogenesis works in snakes. So yeah, this snake will have given birth to some clones of itself as a sort of last-ditch attempt to reproduce. But yeah, quite cool. And it's cool that it's really captured the imagination of a lot of people. It gave me an opportunity to talk about Brahminy blind snakes because of parthenogenesis. Introduced the idea of obligate parthenogenesis to some of my family members, which they kind of didn't really care about that much. I think that was a bit of a step too far. But there you go. Yeah, cool. So I haven't got any other business this episode. So yeah.
That was it. That was all for me.
That's it. All right, cool. So, yeah, as per usual, if you'd like to get in touch with us, you can. herphighlights@gmail.com is the address. If you got any questions, if you got any comments, if you got any corrections, get in touch. If you want to become a Patreon, you can support the podcast at patreon.com/herphighlights. Yeah, all that remains to be said, I think, is thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.